If I believe there's a reason for this pain I'm going through, if I believe that leaving me was all that you could do, if I believe that I can feel you by my side, I'll make it through the night. If I believe that time will teach me how to find my way, if I believe that broken hearts grow stronger every day, if I believe that now you're dancing across the sky, I just might get by. Touch. If I believe that memories won't always hurt this much, if I believe that I will see your face again, I can wait till then.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Revicchio, and welcome to the Somerville Overcoming Addiction Show. We have a special guest tonight. Her name is Stephanie Hirsch. She is our Alderman at Large. And also, you're on the Committee for Public Health and Public Safety. Yeah. So we would like to welcome you.
Thank you.
So the reason why I had you on, for one, is to talk about the event that's going to happen this weekend. Okay. I'm going to mention to everyone out there that on Friday at the Boston Common, we're going to be having an event, and it's called the Mass State Awareness on Boston Common at the Parkman Bandstand, and it's one of the t-shirts. And the reason why we decided to have this event was for the simple fact, for more awareness for people, because we always see a lot of people that are rallying for immigration or women's rights, or, you know, and we never really do see anything for addiction. You know, so we all put our heads together. There's 16 of us, and I would like to have seen it be another day, but actually Friday the 31st of August every year is International Overdose Awareness Day. So this is why they decided to do it on the 31st. So the good thing is that a lot of different cities are lighting up purple. And I had sent a message to Stephanie, and she's gone above and beyond. Oh. And I really would like you to talk about the event that you have planned and what you're going to be doing.
That sounds good. Do I look at you or at the camera?
No, it's up to you.
Okay. So I had spent a full year door knocking while I was campaigning last year, and so I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of people about the different parts of life that they're worried about, and that could range from something that's happening in their home, like somebody sick, or rats, all the way up to like international worries, like they're worried about a war or climate change. And you know, even though there are different types of worries, they're all kind of are really important. But one thing that I've found is that there's sort of people are in different communities, like they're sort of in a silo. They don't always know what's happening outside of their own smaller community, the community within a community. Like the number of people who have died, and we know from what we're going to honor in these upcoming ceremonies that there are 156 people who are just the first Somerville residents since 2000, and that's not including people who have ties to Somerville or people who have died of related causes, as I understand it, or an undetermined cause. So that just the sheer human impact, it's so enormous, but because it really impacts a smaller community within Somerville. On the one hand, some people don't even really register how like catastrophic it is, and on the other hand, there's some people who basically every other week somebody within their family or social circle has passed away, and so like this kind of like people living in two different worlds. And how can we better help people exchange stories and understand each other? And that's what I would love to be able to help people understand just how, you know, it's the numbers are an impact, like just how many numbers, but then like you're saying, I was talking to Joanne earlier, and every single number or data point is a story, and that loss of that one person just reverberates through their whole, you know, community, like it never ends. I mean, and you know, so how can we tell the stories of all of those 156 people plus the related people, so that everybody in Somerville understands the urgency about how big of a problem this is. And so on Thursday, to support the Light Up the City Purple at 5:30 at City Hall, everybody should come, and we are going to place 156 purple flags in the ground by City Hall at 5:30. But also people should, at their own homes, whether it be a ribbon or a paper heart or lights, a string of lights, they should decorate their own porch or window or yard purple as well, just as a way to stand in support of other neighbors and residents who have just experienced either their most personal within their immediate family or within one step out, that level of loss.
See, a lot of people don't know, and I think that I usually do talk about it on the show from time to time, but actually 80% of the country is affected by addiction. And the figures that Matt gave me the other night was there's 26 million people in recovery, but there's also 22 million that are still using. So in order for us to help those people, first of all, they have to want the help. You know, I'm a recovery coach, and we have all these recovery coach programs going on, but if the person that is using isn't ready to help themselves, there's really no way that anybody could help them. You know, they have to really want to do it. And I talk to a lot of parents about their children, and it really is hard, and I tell them, you know, I can talk to you about everything that's available, but unless they're willing to go in and go to rehab and detox, there's just no way that you can really help them. You know, so, you know, we have to have more and more facilities, we have to have more money, and it's an awful thing to say, but I have even helped bury people. You know, we lost someone about 4 or 5 days ago, and they're young. You know, I think this gentleman's like 38 years old. So there's no life policy, you know, and it's like, so how are they going to be able to bury their loved ones? They're going to have to need a GoFundMe or people help them. In the meantime, that person's going to stay in a morgue. And I know it's not really, you know, it's really hard to talk about something like that, but just, would you want your loved one to stay in a morgue and wait until the funds were available for them to be buried? Unfortunately, that's what happens. You know, my son happened to work for the post office, so he did have a life policy, so I didn't have to worry about those worries. You know, it's really, really a sad situation. So these are things that, you know, that people should be more aware of. You know, I mean, back in 2013, when we had our first meeting as a community, that's after Governor Patrick Duvall had deemed that we had an epidemic. Here it is 5 years later, and what have we done?
Yeah.
You know, and there's still more and more people being buried. I mean, as far as I heard, there was 2,069 individuals died last year in the state of Massachusetts. The year before that was 2016. In 2016. So, you know, the numbers are huge.
Yeah.
You know, and I do see like statistics for the years, like 73,000 people died in this country last year. 62 the year before. So it's climbed. From 2014, it was in 40-some-odd thousand, and then, you know, like I said, 15 was 50-some-odd thousand. So the numbers are still climbing.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you talk about the person who isn't ready to go into recovery, what tell me if this is what you think the answer is, or if I have that understanding correct, that you kind of have to have different types of treatment or services for people in different stages of willingness to approach or to consider recovery. So, like you have the, like if it's a needle exchange, that might just be keeping somebody alive day to day, all the way to supporting somebody who's already gone through recovery with like employment or life skills or housing. Like how do you, given that some of there's, it takes a willingness of the person to be ready, how do you support people at all those different stages of willingness?
Well, as a recovery coach, you're supposed to meet people where they're at. So the thing is that if they say that they're willing to go, you can't force anybody into going into recovery. So you basically would talk to them about, you know, what is their plan? What do they think that they would like to do? You know, and tell them the services that are available to them, and let them decide for themselves. Because it's just like being a parent. You know, you turn around and tell your children, you're going to do this. You know, because a lot of people, yeah, and then they go, but they're not ready. Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you have individuals that end up being court ordered to do rehab. I mean, detox and then go into a rehab. And then you also have, they do it for their parents. They do it for the person they love. They're not really doing it for themselves. Right. So sometimes that's why they may end up going into a detox or rehab at least 5, 10 times before they get it. They have to go and do it for themselves. You know, and that's basically where it's at. Like my son Frank even asked me to have him I had a Section 35 him, and he asked me to do that because he knew his insurance company. I don't know how many times I brought him to a hospital and they said, "Oh no, you already had your quota of," and the insurance company won't pay for it, so they would let him out. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the way it was, and it's gotten a little bit better. I don't know how much better, but we have a lot of treatment centers now because in 2009 there was very little available. But now you have a lot of treatment centers, a lot more sober homes. You know, you don't have to send them to Florida. You know, you have Banyan Treatment Center. You have Recovery Center of America. We have Column Health right in the city of Somerville. We have Cambridge Health Alliance. They're really working with the, you know, the person that's using if they need help. So we have a lot of services, but really not enough, because the amount of people that are using is just astronomical. It's really, a lot of people don't even understand that. So I think that's why we're trying to do the events and have, we have the Zachem Bridge being lit up in purple, which is a great thing too, you know. So, and then there will be news channels and probably newspapers. And a lot of times they never covered those. Because I remember when we went to Washington 4 years ago, we had a 2-day event and not one newspaper, not one news channel was there. And it's just to show awareness, accepting that there is a problem. You know what I mean? Don't use stigma well, because addiction does not actually discriminate. There are billionaires that have lost their children, and all the money in the world didn't help them. So, you know, the way we think of people using and substance abuse problems, we don't think very kindly of them. And we have to change that way of thinking, you know, because my son was a beautiful man that helped a lot of people, you know, loved life, joke around, he had a great job, and he ended up losing his life because of OxyContin, you know, so, and it's really, really a difficult thing. I mean, what is the right course of treatment? But we have to show, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, so academically we have to introduce a lot more about substance abuse.
Yeah.
And I think that would be, and I don't think it's just the public school system, I don't think it's just the school committee or whatever. As a community, as a whole, we all have to come together and say, hey, you know what, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about this a little bit more with our kids, because you're not gonna want your, you know, all they have to do is take one pill and they're gone. So they're not gonna come back. So I think it's really, really a serious issue.
Yes, so I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And my family has a history of like alcoholism, so I know that we're like genetically predisposed to risk. So I think about this a lot, and I wonder what's and when parents just like out in the community might be talking about what should I really be worrying about for my child? Should I let them walk to the library on their own, or should I, you know, are they going to get kidnapped or whatever? But like if you just look at the data, you know, the very most highest risk thing that could happen to your child is they could like die from an overdose, and many, you know, I mean, for every person who's actually died, there's another, I don't know what, 5 or 10 whose lives have been really gone off the rails because of addiction, and not just opioids, but also alcoholism.
Right.
So like, how do I, as a parent of a 12-year-old, like I would like to start planning that right now, like figure out what exactly I'm supposed to do to protect her and then the rest of them as best I can, as well as all their classmates. And so I would think we as a community and as a school system, you know, if we can figure that out, that would be really, that'd be really great.
Well, what I've seen is that would be a good idea is for the community, not so much an event, but have a night where they can go to a hidden in plain sight event. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Right, so this way a parent could see the things that they might possibly be leaving around the house that would give them an indication that their child is using. You know, I mean, a pen without out the ink. You know, and it could be a burnt spoon, right? The thing is, and not only that, well, I don't want to give anything away. So if you want to do an event like that, that would be very, very informative to a lot of parents.
Yeah, I think there's something that curriculum for kids at the schools or in community organizations, and then something else for parents, because I think we need our own track, parents, caregivers. Then I talked to, we had a block party yesterday, and Judy, your co-host, came, and we were talking about this, and she said, I had never heard of this before. I thought it was such a great idea. She said every parent should have a plan, or she called it the plan. Maybe you can describe that, but it was like basically having all of your, like if you need these mental health services, what would, like, can you describe what it was? Because I was like, I want that.
Yeah, actually, you know, Judy and I have talked about that a lot, and we figure a lot of parents have a doctor, a dentist, you know, and the way we figured it to be is that if you plan ahead of time, what happens if my child comes home, or I find out that my child is addicted, what would I do?
Yeah.
And we always felt that at that point, you're going to be so emotionally upset with the fact that you're just going to bring her or him maybe to the hospital. But if you did a little bit of research and you put a plan together where you know that, like for instance, Castle and Mass General Arms Program, it's for adolescents. All right, for children that are between the ages of 12 and 17. Now, if you didn't do your research, you would not know that this is available, and you would just go to your private practitioner. And what we've noticed that a lot of times is they may not always have that information for you. So it would be in your best interest to have a plan. So if you did find out, if from the ages of 12 to 17, investigate and see which one of these programs that you would want to have your child be a part of, and then just put it in the drawer along with your shots. You know how they have all the dates and everything else, so that at that point, if you do find out, you can go right to that drawer and find that plan. But if you don't have to, that's better still. Yeah, because we just switched health insurances in my family, and we did look at things like braces. How much does this plan cover braces? But that didn't even occur to me to look at that aspect of it. But next time I have that opportunity, like an open enrollment, I'm going to look and see what our health insurance covers in terms of that kind of. It'd be nice if they even had a special section for that in the summary, so that people can understand what's possible. Yeah, because when I found out, well, after his motorcycle accident, Frank was 21 at the time. I didn't know that OxyContin at the time was addictive. He asked the nurse at the time, this medication that you give me, is it addictive? And he never got an answer to it. And it was on Memorial Day weekend, so you know that a lot of hospitals are understaffed during holidays. You know, and from that point on, because his whole left side was messed up, he ended up being bedridden for over 12 weeks. So at that point, you know, it was completely addicted to the drug that he was given, and fought a 10-year battle. But I was a directory operator back in 1979. I started with the phone company, so I knew how to look up a lot of different things. And I wasn't working for them at the time, but I was calling up and asking operators, can you look up information on this and that? And to tell you the truth, I really didn't get anywhere. It seems like all the phone calls, they'd hang up on me. You know, it's like, no, you have the wrong department, and hang up, and it's like, so where do I go from here? And it wasn't until after I lost Frankie that I learned of all the programs that are out there. You know, more mass organization for addiction recovery. You know, at the time I was living in Revere, I met people from the Revere Cares About Prevention, and they already was doing a memorial on the beach for many, many years. And for 5 years, I was a part of that group, and I would do a poem And the poem that I always did was The Fallen Addict. And it's a great poem because it tells the people not to follow him. He went ahead. And I would like to read that poem someday. And I have done it at our own vigils that we have, but I stopped a few years ago. But I thought it was a really great poem.
So this story about prescribed opioids, is that like what is a typical? What are like a few different routes a person goes to end up dependent on, like, you know, at risk of overdosing? Is it one would be through prescription drugs, but are there other paths people?
Well, see, eventually, what happens when you're on OxyContin, it gets to be the point where your body needs more. So if you started off with an 80, you might end up having to have 2 80s a day, or you might end up having 3 80s in the course of a day. And the thing is, it gets very, very expensive. Luckily, Frank used to make $52,000 a year, so unfortunately, that's where all his money went to. Was buying prescriptions in the street. You know, and I don't know if you know that it's $1. So an 80 would be $80.
Okay, wow.
So if you're doing 3 of them a day, in order to keep your body from not being in pain, you're talking $320.
Oh my goodness.
So then that's why eventually people will go to will go to heroin. So what they're saying now is that there's a lot of fentanyl out there, and there's a lot of carfentanil that is, you know, it's like amazing. And a lot of people are dying from fentanyl.
Yeah, I read that in like people who have like labs or doctors who have tested heroin overdoses for the last year. Every single one has been a fentanyl. It wasn't. None of them were exclusively heroin.
Well, I went to an event, and this is about 3 or 4 years ago. Matt Gannon and I went down to. There was a showing down in Foxborough on a documentary called American Epidemic, and there was someone down there, and he was their district attorney for that area, and he had said that 85% of the deaths were due to fentanyl. So there was hardly any heroin out there, or the heroin was pure. So if it's too pure, you know, that they're going to die.
So aside from the prescription path, like what are the other risk factors, or like what is the other things if you have a 16-year-old? I mean, if they're like drinking heavily, like what are the other ways that people end up shifting to heroin, or I mean, because
well, you know, I think sometimes it's peer pressure. They might say, hey, why don't you try this? And then before you know it, they like the feeling or whatever. Because, you know, one of the things about heroin is, you know, that song Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix died of an overdose. It's the way they feel. And they like it, so they end up going and using again. Basically, that's what happened to Frankie. The last 4 months of his life, he ended up going to heroin, and I ended up going to wake him up in the morning to find that he had passed. But and it was totally amazing because he was so afraid of needles, and he wouldn't let anybody near him. I remember he had a BB, and he was playing with the BB, and he put it in his ear. Do you know? He would not let anybody go near his ear with anything. We had to go to Mass General.
Oh, no.
They had to put him out.
Oh, no.
Yes. But that's how frightened he was. But yet, he put a needle to his arm.
So that's how desperate at that point he was.
Right, that's how desperate he was in that point in his life. And he didn't want work to know what was going on. So I would have him go to EAP at Verizon because that's who I worked for. And he was afraid of losing his job.
Oh, of course.
But instead he lost his life.
Yeah.
And the last thing he was doing was actually calling his EAP and saying, I need help. you know, and ended up passing away a few days later. But, you know, it was really, really sad because Frankie had an addictive behavior to begin with, and with ADHD, you know what I mean? It's just...
So that was like a clinical diagnosis before he got into,
Right.
even had the...
Yeah, because he had been in an IEP when he was younger and stuff like that. So, you know, you have to stay more focused.
Oh, like ADHD is, you mean?
Right.
Like, okay.
So I know that he was sleeping. He had a very upsetting day the day before, and that's why I was making breakfast and I was going to go wake him so that we could talk about, you know, what had happened the day before, and maybe that together we could figure out, you know, what we could do to make it better. And unfortunately, I was not able to do that. Yeah.
Like
So, you know, a lot of times now we talk about dual diagnosis because a lot of people have mental health issues.
Sure.
So you can't really help the addiction if you have the mental health issue. That has to be taken care of first. You know, because a lot of people do self-medicate. And I'm sure that you see that between alcohol,
oh, of course, right, yeah.
marijuana, drugs. If I had a choice, I would rather have someone go to medical marijuana before they would go to a Suboxone or methadone or anything else.
And is that is that, because I've heard that in people regard marijuana as a treatment or as a way to help people who have other kind of addiction. Do you agree with that view?
I do feel that it does. I've seen people use medical marijuana for their, well, there's all different routes. There's a lot of people that go abstinent and cold turkey and don't have anything. Yes, there are a lot of people.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I know of quite a few. Of course, sometimes they end up picking up the e-cigarettes or stuff like that. But no, there are quite a few that I know that are sober,
they
completely
must just have, like,
sober.
such a steely willpower to be able to do that.
Yeah. So what we're doing now, like September 29th, I think it's Macklemore. He's a singer.
Okay.
I may have that wrong. Well, anyway, he's doing a Sober Fest, and I actually got tickets for that.
Oh, neat.
So the thing is that you can enjoy life without having a substance. So, you know, he actually happened to be in Washington 4 years ago when we went there. So this is like one of the first of its kind. And they're going to be doing it down in Rhode Island. So I get to go and see that event and see how that works out. But I think really a plan is a good idea for a lot of parents.
Yeah.
And get more educated. Go to a hidden in plain sight. You know.
So I wonder if we could have a workshop like that. You know, you could do the two together, and just as a trial. I don't know if the city's done this recently, but I'm not aware of it. But, like, you know, go to any meeting space in the city and have somebody explain how do you set up a plan, because that just makes that makes perfect sense.
Well, you know something. I'm going to tell you something that was. This is how. Back 4 years ago, Judy and I wanted to have a Hidden in Plain Sight event.
Yeah.
We went to Somerville High School because Somerville High School had the adult education night, and figured, well, we're going to be, when you have a Hidden in Plain Sight exhibit, it's for adults, not for children. You don't want to teach them.
Yeah, of course.
Right, you don't want to teach them. And so we went up and I filled out papers, and I was supposed to have a night, and it was going to be 2 nights. One night was to show them the movie Anonymous People, and the other one was to do a Hidden in Plain Sight. Well, it didn't happen, and they wanted to see me before the event. Okay. And I guess I hadn't go the right route. I'm supposed to go to Tony. Okay. At the time, he was our superintendent, and I didn't. And they also asked if addicts were going to be there. You know, it's like, so it didn't happen. So we're talking 4 years ago. We tried doing something like this, and it just didn't work. because we all have to be on the same page. We all have to work together.
Well, I think we should I think we should do a whole series of them. To me, I would love to hear parents, like, all different people, you know, in like who've been through what you've been through. I mean, you also have lots of professional experience now related to it, but somebody dealing with it right now, or somebody dealing with a child who's an alcoholic. Like, it could be, I mean, across. And what should you do at different life state when they're like 10, and when they're 12, when they're 15, when they're 20, if they're an adult, you know,
right.
or if they're.
So maybe the city could do something where they come and talk, you know, have a group.
Yeah.
Like
Could
even at the
panel,
library or
yeah.
whatever, that want to talk about addiction, because it's not just opioids.
Right.
You know, even cigarettes. You
right.
know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean,
know.
and they're related too. Like, I mean, I know people say there's not like gateway drugs, but I assume at least some of the drugs are related. Like, if you start using one, then you might be more likely to use another. Or, and how do you just help your kids and your family members steer clear of as much as possible of it?
You know, it was so funny. Well, it really isn't funny, but I think about it. It's like not too long ago, State Rep Mike Connolly's office called me and asked me if I would, how I felt about the treatment, what do you call it, the injection centers.
Okay, yeah.
And you know, at the time, I was totally against it. But then after you sit back and you think about it, you know, it may be if there was a facility like that here, maybe my son would have went there, and he'd be alive now. You know, and not only that, there are people there to educate you, or to give you help if you need help at that point, or if you're reaching out. At least you're in a facility.
Is the drug given out too? Because isn't the problem now is that the drug is.
No, it isn't given out. They have their own drug with them.
But it seems like the big problem right now is that it has this like much more power.
Fentanyl.
So it's almost like you'd have to.
So that's why they have Narcan there.
Yeah, I guess, and just then hopefully the person sticks around for like half an hour or something. Huh? Oh my goodness.
But it works.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the studies that are in Canada
does
said
help.
that it does help.
I mean, when you're in a crisis, an emergency, it seems like you have to do whatever's going to save lives, and then after that, figure out the next step, right?
And the same thing too is that you can do when you have it hidden in plain sight. You might have someone there that will give you a Narcan training.
Yeah.
You know, and they do give out Narcan at that point. So you know, you could do two things at one time. We had an event back in 2013. We showed anonymous people at the Somerville Theater, and then there was someone there from the Cambridge Needle Exchange that would teach people how to use Narcan.
Yeah.
And one woman came in and she got her free canister of not canister, but her kit of Narcan, and actually saved her own daughter's life a couple of days later. So it is an advantage to have Narcan in your home, because you never know, there could be someone outside that may need it, and if you carry it on you, you might be able to save someone's life out in the street. You know, so you know, it's in everybody's best interest to have Narcan. But it is really, really amazing. In the schools, I'd like to now, Somerville High School does have Narcan, you know, and they do a sprit. And because these things that are all mandated by the state, they also do, I told you, life skills, which is a 13-week course. And it teaches them how to speak to people, how to relate to each other, and how a lot of times we do feel the same way.
Of course.
And if someone is low in self-esteem, to say that, you know, that's okay. Do you know what I mean? And I think that we do need to speak more about drugs in the school system. I think we worry about too much.
Right, reputation or whatever.
Right. And you worry about how the parents are going to feel about it. And the thing is, you know what? drugs kill.
Yeah, it should be
Mm.
part of our everyday conversation, I think, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
The more we know as parents, as a community, the more we can talk about it as in a regular, just everyday conversation, the better off. Just like any other kind of health matter.
Right,
I
but that's all communication, because
Yeah.
a lot of times that I've noticed is that I actually was at a public health meeting, and I was going to quite a few of them when Jack Connolly and Mary Jo Rossetti were a part of it. I actually went to every single one, and you know, the one thing that I realize now is the city doesn't really communicate that well to let people know what's available to them. A lot of them don't, even though we were sitting in those meetings and we were talking about the programs that we have at the Somerville Police Department. No one really knows about the core program, you know, and I think that we need to get more, they need to be more educated about what's available to them. Yes, we do have 311, and I don't even think that they even have Somerville Overcoming Addiction as a part of. If someone calls and said, I need help, who do I go to?
I wonder, that's a great question. So if you called 311 and said, my child is facing whatever, I don't have no idea what, maybe I'll,
Yeah,
I'm curious, yeah.
I really don't know what they have in that part of it either.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that we really should find out when someone calls up and they're concerned about substance abuse. Where do they go?
yeah, it's like you need, what do they call it, no wrong door or something, like basically if you go to your school counselor or your school secretary or call 311 or walk into the police station, you know, no matter which entry point you go, you basically get the help you need. I don't know if that happens now or not.
Yeah, I don't really know myself. I have not really investigated to see how that would be handled. You know, I mean, I know that, you know, we have Cheryl Delafano there at the police station, and she does jail diversion, and she's excellent. And I think I've spoken to you and Jesse and actually Matt McLaughlin about the necessity about having a drug court.
Yes.
And I actually talked to Marion Ryan the other day about it, and she said that she would talk to them. Judy and I went to Cambridge, which I don't know if you knew that Bob McWaters was.
Yes.
Okay, so he invited us to come into a session, and we're totally amazed.
I'd like to go see. Oh, my, he's just retired now, right? But
he retired,
but it still happens.
The judge is still there.
Yeah.
Her name is Roanne Spagnow. It's
So what was it
Dragon,
like?
so it's Sragow.
Okay.
She's phenomenal.
So what happened, like in the?
Oh my goodness, I was just so amazed when you went into that courtroom. It's not your typical rise, the judge is here, you know what I mean, and everybody just clams up. She'd come in and say, hi everybody, how is everybody doing today? And every single person that went up there, she addressed them. She cares. And her openness and her willing to help people makes them want to please her as well.
Of course, yeah.
And they're not treated, you know, as inferior or a user or a junkie. Her approach to it is amazing. And I know a lot of people that have actually graduated from drug court, and they do give them a certificate, and everybody congratulates them. I mean, to me, it was just totally amazed. You know, when I went in there, I was a little late. I came in the door. Bob come over, gave me a hug, and I sat down. It was like, oh my God, was he supposed to do that? You know, but. And she also has a homeless court, and her homeless court is in Harvard Square, in a church. And they all meet together, and they talk about the clients before they come into the courtroom.
Oh, that's so great.
You know,
that makes so much
there
sense.
are people, you know, like they have their own community officer who will come in and talk to them, you know, and everybody would say, yes, this person really is trying to, you know, accomplish finding a place to live and getting help, and you know, they all discuss their expertise. Like one woman was that helps people find homes, you know. She talked about how they've come in and we're trying to work on this. And one particular gentleman was a writer, so he had a journal. And he wanted her to see it, so she went and got the journal. And you know what I mean? It's like
so
just
really
to
cares.
be that willing to work with them. She's supposed to come on the show.
Oh, good. I would love to watch that one.
Yeah. And the thing is that Bob McWaters and Rowan, that both of them together made a great team as far as the drug court as well as the homeless court. And the homeless court he had actually put that together. I didn't know. I said, you know, you are really remarkable. We had no idea. You never really talked about that. You know, and more people should know how caring and how many people he's helped.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the addiction portion of it. And now he's gone.
Yeah.
After 34 years. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely should brag about that. I mean, he should share that.
But he's still in the city.
Well, he'll translate that into some, maybe he can start our.
Well, actually, he said that he would like to come back on the show when Rowan comes. So when we interview her. But I'm telling you, this woman is remarkable, and this is something Somerville needs. And they said that, you know, there's not that many in the drug court anymore. Why? Because now they've separated it. This was actually a mental health issue, even though it is substance abuse. You know, so now the mental health course. Have we passed our bit?
I did this over the weekend. I organized this camp out in Nunziato Field. Every year we have a camp out in a different field, so we did that on Saturday night. And then yesterday we had a block party, so this last weekend was. You
know, you've done a lot of really great things since you've been in office.
Well,
I am very, very impressed by you.
It's hard because it's somebody was saying, what's the hardest part? And I think the hardest part is just, you know, if I sit and get emails or phone calls, talk to somebody on the street, people's problems there's so many of them, and they're so hard to fix. So it's like listening to one and then another and then another, and it's just heartbreaking. Like, well, some of them are just annoying, but even the annoying ones, like the rats, for example.
Oh, definitely.
You know, that can really mess up your brain. You know, like, it can really make you go from a good day and it's like, and you're just like, ugh, your mood just tanks, right?
There are a lot of rats.
There's a lot of rats. I was walking down Lake Street. I went to a meeting, and a little rat ran across not right in front of me.
Little?
No, well, I don't know. The first one I saw was like this big, and then I was coming back from the meeting in a different part of Lake Street, and then there was another. Like, oh.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so I'm trying to wrap my head around how do I, how do I kind of group the issues in different buckets and do the very best I can. So, yeah, encouragement is always helpful.
No, I'm telling you, you did a great job. You have been doing a great job because you do care.
Definitely care.
And you look at everything, and that's what's, you know what I mean? When you investigate, you look into different ways of doing things, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate the work you're doing. It's amazing. So, but can you, for different upcoming events, what do you think, maybe I'd be curious to hear from you, what is the most important for people to go to? Because, just to remind people, on Thursday at 5:30 at City Hall is a ceremony where we're putting down purple flags, starting basically now and all through next week. People could and should light up or decorate their porch in some way with the purple. I know in my house I actually ordered little surveyor flags. I got 2 packs of 100, and then we put them up in the yard. But there's 156 is a lot of. It really shows you how many people that really is.
Right.
You know?
Actually, you know, in Marlborough, they have 1,900 to 2,000 flags in the ground. And if you could see the picture, and if you do, I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah.
It is so unbelievable to just look at that. Can you imagine that many flags?
So why is that? Just because that was one really hard-hit community?
Every year they add more. Or they you know, it depends, like I said, remember like 216 and I mean 2016 one year, 2069 the year. So that's what they do. They take the number from that following year and that's how they put the flags up.
Yeah. Okay, so Thursday is the ceremony at City Hall. People should just do their own window or front stoop or whatever. Then Friday is this statewide vigil on the
And that's between 6 and 9.
6 and 9. And then you have your own Somerville Overcoming Addiction Vigil.
Right, that is on September 12th, and it'll be at Trum Field between 6 and 9.
You decided to move it to Trum? Had you
Right.
had it at Trum before?
Because we had it at the high school.
Yeah.
And we would like, yeah, and we did it at East Somerville, but I figured that why not have it in an essential area that everybody could come, and there's always usually more parking
That's
around
right.
Trum Field.
Yeah, you're right. East
You know,
doesn't-
and then they have that huge, it's like an awning, so
Right.
if it does rain, we won't have to postpone
Yeah.
it. But there's just so much going on, you know, we don't know how many numbers that we'll have or how many people that will come, but we'll still continue to
That's
do
right,
this
doesn't
year
matter,
after
you know,
year.
it's just-
No, it doesn't really matter. You know, we want people to come, we'll still celebrate, you know, we still
Absolutely.
have our video, and we'll show it every year. We'll light candles for them, and if people come, that would be great. If not, we're still going to continue to make, this is a tradition now. This is our 6th year, you know, because when we got together in 2013, it was one of the first things that we did besides having the anonymous people showing and having Narcan training, and we did also have our vigil. Those are the two things that we really felt necessary. But, you know, we're willing to help anybody if they need help. You know, I just think that, you know, what we're working on now is that every hospital should have recovery coaches. Every courthouse should have recovery coaches as well as a drug court. The nurses are now doing experts, so I mean, they actually interview kids to see if there's anybody that might have a problem, and then at that point, you know, address the issue. So that's really, really good. And then we still have. I think that we need to have more. I know that there is a lot of first-year freshmen that go in there, that the teachers there in the health department really already covered drugs with the kids. They all work together and making a plan. I'd like to see them continue that instead of doing life skills. They talked about each drug and what happens with that. And I commend them because they were excellent. You know, I mean, I'm up at the high school now, and that's the reason why I went up there. A lot of people would say, I remember saying to a few of them, I said, you must know who I am. I'm your lunch lady. You know, and that if you do ever need any help, to please come to me. You know, it'll be anonymous. But really, no one has really come to me. And Matt Gannon last year spoke to the kids in the gym, and they asked, you know, who would they go to? And he said to them at the time to come and see me, that I could help them, in which I would, you know.
Who else would they go to? I mean, like they
Well, I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't go to their nurse.
Yeah, I guess so, if they had that relationship with them.
Right. You know, a nurse or even go to the, you know, to the police station. Because people should know that even though they're not in there because they got arrested because of drugs, that they can actually go to the police station and ask for help. And you can even actually go to your courthouse. They have a clinician there.
Wouldn't that be nice to have a list of all the places, like a menu of all different places you can walk in and get help? And then for different people, different things are going to work for different people, right? So like, you have a big long list, like, oh, hey, it's somebody from my church, or it's somebody from my sports team, or, you know, it's like, you know, then they can pick and choose to find the person that's most accessible to them.
Right.
You know?
So in a way, you know, there used to be a group that was at the police station. A lot of people don't want to go that route. So if they don't want to go that route, they can always call us. We have a Facebook page. They can always ask for help at that point, or they can call the phone number that's there. It's my phone number that's on the page. if I can help, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, of course.
Because that was my way of healing, was to be able to help others, to make sure, you know, if I could save one, you know, that would be great.
I'm sure you have, huh?
I hope so.
Yeah.
You know, I just let them know that they're important and that they do matter and that I'll do whatever I can for them. But a lot of times they don't feel that they're worthy or that, you know, they have their own stigmas. How I pointed out is that they're feeling badly that they're using to begin with. They don't need anybody else to shame them. And that it's okay that if your child is using, save their life. It shouldn't matter what people think or say, because it doesn't matter what the Joneses think. You know, it's about you. It's about you and your family and your child and getting the services that they need. And there are services out there if you really need them. And, you know, we only have like 4 minutes left to this show. And you're wondering, you say to yourself, we're going to talk for an hour? What are we going to talk about?
I got a lot more things on my to-do list, the stuff I want to help with. So
no, I mean,
the longer we talk, the more I'll ask.
Well, that's good, because you might be the person that's going to help this city get what they need when it comes to substance abuse disorder.
So I understand anyway that with the if and when the marijuana, recreational marijuana gets licensed, then we get revenue coming in for addiction recovery.
We actually did just get a payment not too long ago.
Medical, right, for $40,000?
Yeah, from the medical marijuana facilities. You know, I attended a meeting on that, what to do with that money, and one of the things was to have a counselor, a full-time counselor that's able, because Tommy Ward used to be a part-time.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right, up at the Full Circle and Next Wave. And now that was one of the things to do with that money, was to have one that would, person that would be full-time.
Did he just retire? Was he somebody who just, or no? I'm thinking of somebody who just retired from Next Wave Full Circle. That wasn't him?
Yeah, that was Tom
him.
Ward.
That older guy. Okay.
Tommy Ward, yeah. So they're talking about doing that, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's up to 5 years. I guess for 5 years we're supposed to be getting money back from these medical marijuana facilities.
And I think it's quite a bit more once they get into the recreational.
Right. Well, I don't know anything about the recreational. To tell you the truth, I'm very disappointed that the recreational marijuana was approved. Only because the bill that was presented at the time that they were asking the voters to vote for it, it really wasn't a good plan. Because they were talking about, you know, 6 marijuana plants in each apartment, only 12 in the whole house. And it's like, when you go outside, you're never going to smell fresh air again. All you're going to do is smell marijuana.
It's already more like
you know. And the thing is that when it became legalized, it was for 21-year-olds.
Yeah.
And the younger kids don't understand that I'm 18, it's legal, and they're walking around smoking it, that it's not really legal to them.
Yeah.
And the edibles, yeah, they look like Skittles, they look like all these things that your children, I worry about children, you know.
But so we'll see how it goes.
That'll be another subject that we'll talk to at another time.
Yeah, that would be a great, to have a few different people talk, because people have, like, some people love it, and some people hate it.
No, and it's just that I agree, like I said, with medical marijuana is being someone's recovery.
Yeah, but
it's just that I look at it, the open to everyone, and I'm afraid for children getting into it, because you know marijuana from before and now is 24% higher. THC level is 24% higher. You know, so it's a lot stronger. But you know what? We are definitely going to say good night to everybody out there that's listened. I really do love the relationship that we have. I know that any time that I've ever asked you, although we didn't get my bench.
Oh, no, that's for next.
Okay, that'll be next. Good.
Yes.
You know, you made great effort in getting the community together to please light up your porches on purple. Starting Thursday, and show that you do care about overdose prevention. And, you know, we want to see more blue ribbons out there. Those are for recovery. Oh. So that'll be in September.
Oh, cool.
All right. So, and I want to thank the city for the proclamation and whatnot, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that Thursday night, right?
I'm not sure the format exactly, but I know there's a few different.
Yeah. All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, my, is it off?
Well, he's going to be shutting off the YouTube, but the YouTube is still on.
Oh.
But I want to thank you for coming
Yeah,
on.
this
I
is
hope
fun.
it was,
No, it's really interesting thinking about it.
yeah.
I like to think more about that drug court.
To tell you the truth, I certainly would love to get more involved in the city when it
Yeah.
comes to these things because, you know, like I have an event even September 22nd, Wildfire is having,
Wildfire?
those are the people that, the band that came to my events.
Okay.
And they're actually doing a substance abuse night. So every year they do a benefit for something. And so the benefit this year is for substance abuse,
good.
and they're going to be having, they decided that they were going to give the money to the Chris Herron project. And so, you know, and Matt Gannum is going to come on and speak and do a little poetry.
Awesome. That sounds great.
I'm going to be speaking.
I'll have to figure out how to tune into this show so I can watch future episodes.
This show? Well, we'll show you.
Okay.